Welcome students. Today we will study Sylvia Plath's poem Tulips. Sylvia Plath was an American poet. She lived from 1932 to 1963. She is known as a confessional poet. Confessional poetry means poetry that tells very personal feelings. Plath often wrote about her struggles with mental illness, identity, and life. She wrote Tulips in March 1961. At that time, she was in a hospital in Cambridge, England. She had surgery for appendicitis. While recovering, she felt weak, calm, and almost empty. Someone gave her tulips as a gift. Their brightness disturbed her peace. The poem shows her conflict between wanting rest, even death, and being pulled back to life by the red tulips. This video covers the summary, explanation, and analysis of Tulips by Sylvia Plath. Summary of Tulips by Sylvia Plath. The poem Tulips describes Sylvia Plath's experience while recovering in a hospital. At first, she feels peaceful in the white and quiet room, where she has given up her identity and become almost like nobody. This emptiness feels comforting, almost like death. However, a bunch of bright red tulips disturbs this peace. The tulips remind her of life, blood, and her emotional connections, such as her husband and child. She feels torn between wanting the calm emptiness of death and being pulled back to life by the flowers, her heart, and her responsibilities. The tulips become a symbol of life's weight. The flowers show that she cannot escape living, even when she desires silence and nothingness. Explanation of Tulips by Sylvia Plath. The poem has 9 stanzas. Let us study it carefully, line by line. The poem begins with the speaker talking about tulips. These are red flowers that someone has sent to her while she is in the hospital. She says the tulips are too excitable. This means that the flowers feel too full of life, too energetic, and too loud in their presence. They disturb the quiet space she is in. She then contrasts them with the environment around her. She says, "It is winter here." Winter is a season usually associated with silence, cold, and stillness. This shows that the hospital room feels calm and lifeless. She notices how white everything is, how quiet, how snowed in. The color white suggests purity, emptiness, and calmness. The quietness gives her peace. The feeling of being snowed in suggests that she feels cut off from the world. She continues by describing herself resting in the hospital bed. The word peacefulness means freedom from trouble, stress, or disturbance. She feels that her body and her surroundings are covered by calmness, just like a light lies gently on the walls, bed, and her hands. This makes her feel almost invisible and erased. She says, "I am nobody." This means she does not feel like a person with an identity anymore. She has no role, no personality, and no importance. She adds, "I have nothing to do with explosions." Explosions are symbols of energy, chaos, and noise. By saying this, she is rejecting life, energy, and activity. She is choosing silence and emptiness. The speaker explains that she has given up everything personal. She says she has surrendered her identity to the hospital system. Her name and day clothes are taken away, which means her ordinary life has been removed. Her history has been handed over to the anesthetist, the doctor who makes patients sleep before surgery. Her body belongs to the surgeons. This shows that she no longer owns herself, she is only a patient. She describes her position in the hospital bed. The simile compares her head to an eye that is trapped between the lids. The eye cannot close, meaning she must watch and absorb everything. She calls herself a stupid pupil, because she must take everything in, even if she does not want to. She then observes the nurses. She says they pass, and they do not trouble her. They are compared to gulls, which are seabirds, flying inland. Their white caps make them look similar to one another. Because they all look alike, she says it is impossible to tell how many there are. This shows that she views them not as individuals, but as identical figures moving around her. Then, she describes her own body. This comparison between her body and pebbles suggests that the nurses treat her body in a routine way, just as water naturally flows over stones. She is passive and small like a pebble. The nurses bring her a numbness with their bright needles and a sleep with their medicines. She explains that she has lost myself. She does not feel like her true self anymore. She is tired of carrying the baggage of life. She points out her patent leather overnight case, which looks like a black pillbox. This is her suitcase. She also notices the photograph of her husband and child. Their smiles catch onto my skin, little smiling hooks. This image shows that their love and presence are not comforting but painful to her. Their affection feels like a burden to her. She continues with the image of losing her ties. She compares herself to a cargo boat that is heavy and old, weighed down by unnecessary things like her name and address. She says that the nurses have swabbed me clear of my loving associations. This means they have removed her emotional attachments, leaving her isolated. She remembers being placed on a green plastic pillowed trolley. She felt scared and bare as she was moved into surgery. She imagines all her possessions, tea set, bureaus of linen, and books, sinking away as if underwater. She compares this to drowning, saying, "The water went over my head." She then describes herself as a nun, saying, "I have never been so pure." This image suggests she feels cleansed of worldly ties, almost religiously purified, though it is also lonely. Then, she explains her state of mind. Flowers are usually symbols of life, but she rejects them. She wants emptiness, freedom from responsibilities. She says, "How free it is, you have no idea how free." This emptiness feels liberating. She describes the peacefulness as so big that it dazes her. It demands nothing, except a name tag and a few trinkets. She compares this peacefulness to death. The last two lines of this stanza show she imagines death as a form of peace, something final and sacred. Then she turns again to the tulips. She says, "The tulips are too red in the first place, they hurt me." The color red is intense and connected to blood, life, and wounds. The tulips disturb her stillness. She says that even before unwrapping them, she felt their life even when they were still wrapped in paper. She says, "Their redness talks to my wound, it corresponds." The tulips remind her of her pain, her surgery, and her body. She compares them to a dozen red lead sinkers round my neck. This image suggests that they weigh her down like heavy objects used to sink fishing lines. She says, "Nobody watched me before, now I am watched." She feels exposed because of the tulips. She says, "The tulips turn to me, and the window behind me." Even the sun and the tulips seem to look at her. She feels thin, fragile, and without depth. She says, "I have no face, I have wanted to efface myself." She wants to erase her existence. She complains that the vivid tulips eat my oxygen. The flowers seem to steal her breath and force her to live. She explains that before the tulips, the air was calm enough. Breathing was simple and natural. But now, the tulips filled it up like a loud noise. She compares the disturbed air to a river flowing around a sunken rust-red engine. The tulips dominate her surroundings and force her to pay attention to them. She says that before, her attention was free, playing and resting without committing itself. Now her attention is trapped by the flowers. Finally, she describes how the walls seem to warm themselves. The presence of the tulips brings too much heat, energy, and life. She says, "The tulips should be behind bars like dangerous animals." They feel wild and threatening to her peace. She compares them to the mouth of some great African cat, opening. This makes the tulips seem like predators. She also becomes aware of her heart. She connects the red color of the tulips with the redness of her heart. Both represent life, which she finds overwhelming. In the final lines, she is tasting her own tears. The sea symbolizes emotions and distance. The word health seems far away from her, like another country she cannot reach. Analysis of Tulips by Sylvia Plath. Sylvia Plath's Tulips is a poem that explores the conflict between peace and the unavoidable presence of life. One of the main themes is the desire for emptiness, as the speaker finds comfort in the quiet hospital room and says she is learning peacefulness and becoming nobody. This emptiness feels similar to death, which she imagines as comforting, like closing on a communion tablet. At the same time, life feels like a heavy burden, and this burden is symbolized by the tulips. Their brightness, redness, and energy force her to confront her body, her heart, and her emotions. Even her family is described as a weight, with the smiles of her husband and child compared to hooks that tie her to life. The tulips are the strongest symbol in the poem. They stand for life and emotional connection. Their red color is linked to blood, wounds, and the heart. It reminds her that she cannot escape living. In contrast, the color white appears again and again in the walls, hands, and caps of the nurses. It represents emptiness, purity, and peace. Water also appears as a symbol of cleansing. At the end, she tastes of water that is warm and salty, like the sea, showing her tears and distance from health. Other symbols, such as the overnight case, the family photo, and the hooks of smiles, represent the personal ties and responsibilities that she wants to escape but cannot. Plath's imagery makes the emotions very vivid. The white walls, this bed, these hands create a still and sterile picture. The tulips are described as red lead sinkers. However, the mouth of some great African cat makes them feel dangerous and suffocating. The image of the speaker as a cut paper shadow makes her seem thin and almost disappearing. The final image of tasting water, like the sea, leaves the poem on a haunting and emotional note. The poem also uses many literary devices. Similes appear when her head is compared to an eye between two white lids, or when the tulip's breathing is like an awful baby. Metaphors include the lines, "My body is a pebble," and "I am a cargo boat." These metaphors show her heaviness and passivity. Personification makes the tulips alive. They breathe and eat her oxygen. The contrast between white stillness and red life structures the entire poem. The symbolic, colorful imagery deepens the conflict between emptiness and vitality. In conclusion, the poem Tulips by Sylvia Plath is not just about flowers in a hospital room. It is a meditation on life, death, identity, and emotional weight. The speaker longs for the peace of emptiness. However, the red tulips and the pull of her own heart remind her that she cannot escape life. Through symbols, contrasts, and vivid imagery, Sylvia Plath shows the struggle between the comfort of deathly peace and the painful but unavoidable presence of living. Thank you for watching this video on the summary, explanation, and analysis of Tulips by Sylvia Plath.